you just take her now and bring her back in 8 years?
Our presenters will be coming in about 9:30ish. So we're gonna have a few catch-up things just. Could you all stand please and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Your notice is published. Minutes from January 26th. Does anybody have any corrections or amendments? If not,
Move accept.
without exception,
Move accept. Minutes.
Second. I'll second.
I guess we got that done already. All those in favor? Aye. Negative? Okay, it's time for citizen comments. Minutes, does anybody wish to, does any audience wish to make a comment? Jesse?
Good morning, everyone. Jessie White with the Coastal Conservation League. I just wanted to bring to this group's awareness an issue that's happening over in Jasper County that I think affects Beaufort County as well. The Jasper County has put a moratorium in place along the Broad River corridor. They called it the UHA Broad Corridor because of how ecologically and culturally significant and sensitive that is and how important it is to maintaining water quality in the Port Royal Sound. The Chelsea development is a 6,000 acre parcel that sold back in 2019, and there's a development group out of Missouri that's trying to bring in several thousand new homes into that area. Jasper County essentially turned down the request, and that led to the moratorium, but now the town of Ridgeland is trying to annex the property and essentially extend its jurisdictional boundaries down to Highway 170, which we all know is already a bit of a mess. And so I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. There was the first public hearing last night, the town of Ridgeland, and massive turnout. Hundreds of residents turned out, all very vocally opposed, asking Ridgeland to focus on growing within its own jurisdictions and focusing on the existing residents first. But there will be another public hearing on April 4th, and the town will be making a decision likely then. They are also in the process of updating their comprehensive plan and doing a feasibility study, but the annexation of this Chelsea parcel is still moving forward, regardless of the fact that they haven't done either of those two updates. And regardless of the fact that Jasper County has the moratorium in place in this exact area and asked Ridgeland and Hardyville to not proceed with any annexations during that moratorium period, which has been extended to the end of July so that Jasper County can update its comprehensive plan and its rural zoning. And this property is zoned rural preservation right now, but they want to develop it as a PUD for thousands of homes. So it is, because of its location right there on the corridor in between Beaufort and Jasper, I thought it was something that this body might want to be aware of. And of course, it's not, Ridgeland does not have an agreement with Beaufort Jasper, so it is unknown in terms of how it would be served with water and wastewater services currently. So keep an eye on that one.
What sort of density are we potentially talking about?
So right now they're looking at 2,000 residential units and 500,000 square feet of commercial. And that's just for the first Chelsea portion, but it's essentially a domino situation where there's many other large tracts that are either for sale or potentially for sale. That could mean a total of 5,000, at least 5,000 new units. And that's in addition to the legacy PUD that the town of Ridgeland annexed back in the early 2000s called Genesis, which is somewhere around 14,000 units that have not been built out. So we're talking many thousands of homes potentially in this area.
It's Ladies Island on steroids.
Yeah.
Hey, wonderful.
It's very, very concerning. There's no infrastructure to support it, and appreciate the town of Port Royal's guidance to the town of Ridgeland to express lessons learned. Hardyville has also said publicly that they have no interest in this and they wouldn't be annexing it, and they don't want to be used as a pawn in this situation.
That's good to hear.
So that was also very comforting, but perhaps some guidance from additional Northern Beaufort County.
Who's pushing it specifically? You got names?
Well, so obviously the developer, but the town administrator. The town administrator seems pretty keen on it, and it's a small
How about
council. So there's one council member who has voted against the annexation. When they petitioned to accept the annexation, there was one that voted against it, and the others seem focused on growth.
There's no agreement with Beaufort Jasper in there.
There's not.
What does Ridgeland have now for?
Richland has its own water and sewer, which is very problematic
small.
already.
It's very small.
Yeah,
When I was manager there,
They're
they had problems.
primary.
there was a resident who spoke who said she forgot her water bottle, but she meant to bring it because it's brown water, that she has to run her water bills through the roof because she has to run it for so long to get it clean. So essentially all the comments from the residents were saying, like, we have problems right now in our town, like, do not overextend before we fix what we have here. So, but I was there, I saw the turnout, it was really impressive. Then the council continued their meeting, and there seemed to be a disconnect between some of the council members who just witnessed all that turnout and seemed like there was still an interest in the town moving forward with the annexation, so.
It would seem that if they go forward or try to go forward, the BJWSA would have to be the source of water and sewer. Can they kind of nix it by refusing to service it, or how would that work?
Ridgeland Water and Sewer, their utility has a master plan that says they assume that Beaufort Jasper Water and Sewer will serve these larger PUDs that have been annexed and could be annexed. But Beaufort Jasper Water and Sewer was not a part of that master planning process, so
Love that.
all I can say as a representative of Beaufort Jasper is that there may be conversations happening, but that there's nothing been signed. No letter of availability has been issued to any of these developers from Beaufort Jasper, which is part of what would kick off the process.
Thanks.
But Beaufort Jasper has not provided any will serve, no letter of service. Any prior letters of service that have been issued in the past have expired, so they are no longer part of it.
Wait, the other kind of relevant piece is waiting in the wings. I mentioned that there was another domino that's called Ticton Hall, and Robert Graves is the one pursuing that, and former county administrator is for Beaufort County is working with him.
How many acres is that?
That is,
About 3,000 units is what's proposed.
yeah, but the acreage I think is around
800 to 1,000, something like that.
I thought it
It's
was
just
like-
north of Chelsea.
I thought it was like 1,500 acres.
1,500.
Yeah, I think so.
I just know the unit count.
No,
So,
it does not
3,000.
have a, then the only existing
master plan?
PUDs were approved in the early two
I don't think that
thousands,
part.
the Genesis PUD and Good Hope, which is what is the community for Ridgeland to reach all the way down towards Highway 170. But Good Hope has a conservation easement on part of it, and the Genesis has not broken ground or developed at all.
Thank you, Jesse. Let me ask you, Alice, Ridgeland participating in the regional growth Soloco initiative?
Oh,
They're not?
I
don't think so.
No, I don't think they've been at the meeting.
I don't think so.
Are they part of it?
They
Well, that
haven't.
fits.
They haven't been, only Hardyville.
Only Hardyville and UMC, yeah. I think UMC's provided some information. Yeah. No, they haven't.
Have they been asked to be a part of it?
They've
Okay, with your permission, I'm gonna just change the agenda just a little bit. I know, I see our guests are here. Mr. Fred Lyda, Fred is here, and this young lady, you, Anna.
Anna, yes, sir.
And there are speakers for the day, so I'm gonna defer, if that's all right with you, defer and let them speak. We weren't anticipating you to be here until 9:30, because I knew you had another meeting to attend. But please, take center stage, and we're ready to talk with you.
Alrighty. Do I have control of this here?
No.
No, okay.
Nice try.
Good morning. So I want to be able to address as many questions as possible. I'm not really sure how much time we have, so if I'm just gonna go by the slides, but if you need me to stop or you need me to answer any questions, I'd be happy to take a little bit more time on each one. Next slide, please. So these are just kind of a brief recap, but last numbers are from 2021. Most of this data came through via Charity Tracker, which is the data collection software that we have a lot of organizations in our county using right now that tracks these numbers. And they just reflect individuals experiencing housing insecurity, homelessness, which has been discussed previously in our county is close to 593. And then we also have close to 300 children in the school system that are registered with McKinney-Vento. That doesn't mean that they're out in the street homeless. That means that they could be couch surfing, but they are considered homeless under that federal act, which is another way that HUD can deem someone homeless, and McKinney-Vento is one of those ways. Next. Indicators of homelessness. Poverty doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have homeless. Kind of like the case we put, Mississippi has low rates of homelessness, but extremely high poverty, but they also have very low housing rates. So poverty can be, is the highest, homelessness is like poverty, but that doesn't mean that that necessarily determines a homeless rate in a community. And again, if I'm going too fast, let me know. These are just some key points. Next. Right now, this is one of the things that we're discussing. Community perception is, why doesn't anyone do anything about this? Well, people have rights is the basic rule of that. You can't, homelessness is not a crime. Homelessness is usually a symptom of something else. So we can't just go out and pick up people. There are ways to address mental health concerns, but even that takes a process. Next. Adult Protective Services is the main body that someone would call first, or mobile crisis, to address someone that is on the streets that might be having a mental health crisis, but that would be applicable to anybody or any adult. So it's the same process. Again, just because they're homeless doesn't mean that their rights are diminished in any capacity. Next. There are ways, and we put this slide in here just so that you get a perception of what is available. There are ways to gain conservatorship, and again, what you can do for any other citizen can be done, but does that person want responsibility? Is that person a family member? Can you provide enough information to probate court to justify a conservatorship? And then even then, if you do get the person out of the street into maybe a 72-hour psych hold, what happens when they stabilize? They're going to go right back out in the street because, again, they will have rights. Probate court will come in and they will take the court order out because that person's now stabilized. So there are avenues, but same rules apply. Next. In our county, we have, and this one I'll spend a little more time on just to give an idea of what we have here. So this is the continuum of housing as we would like to see, and what is mostly seen in like bigger cities, not rural areas like ours. So we have the unsheltered, which is our homeless population. We don't have an emergency shelter. We don't really have transitional housing. We do have homes that can absorb someone who's experiencing homelessness, but that's not generally the case. We don't have specific services or organizations to that. We have public housing. Most cases of our public housing are not, again, someone from the street getting into those programs. It's just, average citizens who fit the poverty lines to qualify for those. Yes.
Let me stick something in there. So the public housing that we have, if you look at the number of units that we have available to us, a little over 80% of them are filled with people who either have a disability or are elderly. It's not what public housing was designed to do. It was supposed to help you get on your feet so you could move out. You're never gonna move out if you're old or disabled. Those things aren't gonna change. So what we need is the supportive housing for elderly and disabled, so that that housing stock could be freed up for people who are actually trying to work their way through.
You're taking my whole presentation.
Sorry.
But he brings up a good point. That's the situation with most housing that we have that's available to anyone, even programs like our emergency shelter or like Capper's Children's Center or Children's Shelter is adolescents, it's not babies. Family Promise is a program that provides shelter for individuals experiencing homelessness until they find, but what we're seeing is that they're not picking people from the street, they're absorbing new clients that are coming through into homelessness through evictions and then helping them. So those individuals don't touch the street. And so the ones on the street are not being helped. And then what he said, the public housing provided by Beaufort Housing Authority, which is experiencing the same curve that a lot of credit properties, like income credit properties are experiencing, we're losing them. In this market, people who were part of those programs don't want to be part of them anymore. So what we do have, we're losing by a big number. And then of course we have our normal market. So we're missing components to our continuum in Beaufort County to help with the overall issue. Next. Oh, do we have any questions on this one so far?
Does Salvation Army do anything? I've heard different things and I've never looked at it.
Yes, so they have, they provide all of the services that they provide within their organization, clothing, food, vouchers for things. They'll pay for hotel stays. They have a lot of repeat customers for like the hotel stays. And then with the partnership that I'll talk a little bit more about, we have different things available through them, like transportation. If we encounter a homeless individual who doesn't want to be in Beaufort County anymore on their own terms, the Salvation Army has been very helpful in transporting them or helping obtain bus tickets to get them to where they want to be, where their families are, where they could get support that they need. Next. The Housing First perspective is the main premise of it is that housing should not be discriminatory, which if you've ever had to rent an apartment, unless you make 3 times the rent, unless you have perfect credit, unless you don't have a criminal record, you're not getting an apartment. Even our housing authorities, even our programs like Family Promise have regulations. If you don't pass a drug test, you can't be part of their program. Even though some of the guidelines from HUD dictate that there has to be non-discriminatory practices and that your goal is to get someone housed and then address the causes of their homelessness. So it's a battle, but that should be the way to approach it. And it has been very successful in other communities that run programs that have this method so that, again, if you had bad credit, that's fine. Let's get you into a house. We'll help you fix it. And there are organizations, and I'll speak more to that in a moment, that can do that. Do you have any questions about that? Yes.
Doesn't the city of Houston, didn't they have a shelter where they didn't force rules on them initially? They just wanted to give them a place to live, and then they would approach them later about if they had a drug problem or mental illness.
So
And that seemed to be successful versus San Diego, which was the other way around.
right. So the city of Houston has a lot of programs, and they're very successful with a functional zero program, which has proven extremely successful with veteran populations. And the functional zero is one person's coming in, one person going out. But when you remove those discriminatory barriers, it's easier to create the flow, whereas when you don't, you have a barrier and you can't get the person in, and then those who are in there can't get out because those same barriers that applied to get in are now not letting them get out. So yeah, Houston has been very successful in putting this practice in place.
I want to piggyback a little bit on what Phil said. So I was helped with another person that was working with a homeless young lady. And when I spoke with her, and I spoke to Fred about this, and I realized that, that certain testing and so forth had to take place before she could get any help. And here's what she said to me. She said, Mr. Mitchell, I'm not crazy. They want me to admit that I'm crazy before I can get some help. And once I admit that I'm crazy, other barriers come with that. She said, I just need to get out of the elements. And the morning that I met her, it had rained buckets the night before. And the next morning, it was probably 95 degrees. And when I saw her by that road, my heart broke, because what she said made sense. She was in a very stressful situation. She told me the history of how she got there. I just wonder whether we could have a place for those persons, because I think any of us could get in that situation where stress puts us in a terrible mental state. We could relieve the stress, we could deal with the other situation. She said, I just need a place right now so I can get out of the elements and get back on my feet. And I don't think we have a place like that, right?
We don't.
And I was in Greenville last summer, and a friend of mine was showing me around the town. And one of the first things he showed me, I mean, literally the first thing after we left dinner, was their homeless shelter, which was pretty much right in the middle of town. And he was very proud of it. Now, I'm not saying it's that simple for us, but I still think that we need to have a situation where we can just sometimes get the people out of the elements and then maybe determine, what comes next. And we don't have that now, I don't think.
No, we don't, and you're right. I encountered a client who was living in a tent, worked, and their situation was that a few years ago they lost a spouse, and the loss of their spouse caused them to go into a very dark depression that then cost them their house, and then their job, which was a good job, and they had nowhere to go. They ended up in a tent. And eventually we were able to assist in getting them into a roommate situation and get help afterwards and get, mentally where they needed to be back so that they could function in society again. But just the loss of, think of if you're married and you lose your spouse all of a sudden and you don't have the tools to cope or the supports to cope with that loss, it's going to affect you. And it unfortunately affected this person that way. So it's not all mental health. It's not all addiction. It's not all substance abuse. There are many reasons why we have our homeless population here.
So the reason that we showed you that continuum was to make the point that the shelter's not the solution. You get the shelter, but it's useless unless you have the rest of the continuum.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what are you gonna do? Subsidize people's housing for the rest of their lives in a hotel? We have homeless people who will tell us that I have an asthma condition and the only place I can stay is a hotel on the beach, and it needs to be on Hilton Head. So be careful when you listen to people tell their stories. They have learned how to tell those stories. They have watched people's facial expressions when they tell their stories, and they've realized, ooh, I got a good reaction on that one. I'm gonna play that part up next time. So be careful when you listen to what they say. Often they have figured out how to navigate the systems and how to manipulate people. I'm not saying that you want to be cautious about everybody that you talk to, but look at the reason that we have housing first. When you want to understand this situation, picture a man who's an alcoholic who shows up at an AA meeting because he's working on getting out of that situation. He's working on his sobriety. And at the end of that AA meeting, what does he say to everybody? Okay, see you guys tomorrow. I'm going back under the bridge. How the heck are you going to get out of an addiction or any other challenge when you don't even have a place to sleep at night? So the concept is get them in a place to stay first. Now, immediately begin working on the causes that have gotten them into that situation in the first place, whether that's a mental illness or a financial situation or could be any number of things. But the solution is not just put them in a shelter until you have a plan for where they're gonna go after that. We build a 50-bed shelter, you know, you're looking at multiple millions of dollars to operate that per year. So it's a huge investment. But what do you do with the 51st person? Until you have a continuum that will allow you to move people through that, they're just gonna be housed in that shelter. We now have 180 Place with, I forget what their bed capacity is, but there's no space.
Yeah, I mean, but 180 Place is our closest state shelter. I know a lot of people talk about Savannah, but that's a great example. 180 Place has, as of right now, 7 available revolving beds, because the rest of their 160 bed capacity is veteran programs or veterans or elderly that they have nowhere to go. They can't, there's no housing, and the barriers still exist. What housing there is has so many requirements to get there. And how does a shelter absorb a homeless individual and then say, oh, we're gonna make you homeless again because we can't find where, they have all the case management, there's no housing. So they're there, and so now there's 7 beds that are constantly occupied. And that means we don't have access. That means even if we wanted to transport someone to 180 Place, there's the likeliness that we'll be able to get any kind of access is very low. But it's not just us. That is everywhere. Shelters are full. The case management can't find housing, and that's,
180 covers a large regional area too.
yeah, it covers our whole Low Country COC area. So that would be Jasper, Colleton, Charleston, which Charleston in itself. I mean, those 7 beds are just, and again, once they're occupied, 180 Place rule is we don't ask anyone to leave. If you're working the program, if you're going through the case management, we can't ask you to leave until we've found you housing, and if there's no housing, so right now it's an apartment complex.
That's the reason that we created the Affordable Housing Coalition, which eventually evolved into SOLOCO, was to get to the point where we would have a housing trust fund so that we could begin working from that right-hand side of the continuum and start working our way back. That's how you're gonna get there. Then you work your way back to the point where you can build a shelter, because then all the other facilities are in place to receive people as they move through.
Next slide. So our next steps, these are just some items, and I'll just kind of highlight a couple. We just completed our pit count, which has been successful through the collaboration of, again, the organizations that came together, in which is now the Residential Empowerment Coalition.
You guys all know what PIT is?
The point in time, okay, so that's where we are right now. We have 24 organizations that are working together in the REC. We meet monthly. One of the things that we're addressing right now is a public service announcement that is out for release to the community, because we also saw a need for our officials to have answers.
Knowledge.
Yes, and you know, some of you get beat down by questions from your constituents or your populations that you serve, and you may not have the exact answer because you don't work with individuals experiencing homelessness every day. So we created a document that's basically a myth and fact of homelessness that addresses what can you do, what is right, what isn't, that can be dispersed. So those are the types of smaller goals that the coalition will be working on. The larger goals, again, will be things like, we're tossing around a prosperity center right now. Not a homeless shelter, but a center that can house multiple organizations in kind of an open office area where individuals can come in, they can get mail, there will be mailboxes there, PO box type mailboxes. They can shower, they can wash clothes, they can watch TV, they can, you know, SC Works can help them find a job. Then they can go to Coastal Empire and get their med management. They can go across, you know, the hall to the United Way and get whatever other needs they, you know, just a localized place to start at least part of the case management process.
Do you have any identified locations for that yet?
No, you got one?
Actually, yeah, I'll get with you afterwards.
Okay, so we are looking. The United Way is kind of our lead organization because it will involve a capital campaign. There will be, but as far as the organization's involvements, everyone's on board. On being able to say, hey, yeah, we would love to be there 1 day a week. That would be so, great because again, it's hard to receive benefits if you don't have a mailing address. It's hard to go to Social Security and then try to go to Medicaid and then try to go to, so trying to at least make it more accessible might actually help individuals, and then implementing different programs. I know that at one time, Animal Control had a program where they could hire people, pay them daily to help, with different aspects of, stuff like that. There's a program out of Spartanburg called Litter Heroes. Things like that could also be implemented that could provide jobs, that could help with things that we do in the county anyway. Why not employ people that are out anyway? You pay them. That can start a whole process, a change of life for them. The autonomy, the integrity, the self-reliance that can provide an individual. We take those things for granted sometimes because, we don't have to live that experience, but just ideas.
So, you gave a briefing to us at one of our city council meetings, probably 2 years ago at least.
I was so nervous.
Phil tends to do that, he makes folks nervous. But one of the things I think that you shared with us that was being considered at the time was that, let me back up. When this kind of first came on my radar, I heard feedback from constituents is that we wouldn't want any kind of homeless shelter in our community because then all the homeless folks will be in our community. And I think one of the things that you discussed was that maybe each city or town would have a relatively smaller place that could accommodate the folks within their jurisdiction. Is that something that's still being considered as this place where folks can come and get these services as opposed to one centralized location?
So, and then that goes back to what Fred was saying about a shelter. Shelters are unfortunately not really the solution, because what we would have is we would just have a place to house all the individuals in Waterfront. That's what we would end up with. And then where would they go from there? Even if they did programs, the barriers still exist. So there are other things that have to happen, and all we would be doing then would be turning our wheels, investing millions of dollars in a facility without having attacked or approached affordable housing, enforcing or maybe helping bills that exist on the Senate floor right now that would allow faith-based organizations to build and then get tax credits on those. Well, I'm not savvy to tax laws or anything like that, but I'm all for if a church wants to build 10 units and run a program, and all we need to do is pass a bill that says, hey, because you're a church, you can still collect that tax credit. How much would that save our county? Every night that an individual who is experiencing homelessness decides that they're and I say this loosely, it's not like that they're cold or that they don't want to be in the weather, so they're going to go stand in front of the business that they know they're going to get trespass charged with and then sent to the detention center. That's $141. I know it's state, but there's still cost to us because now we don't have the capacity. Then we run into issues with where we put individuals who do commit big crimes that need this space, So we need to fix a lot of the problems that stop the continuum from having all the components.
Were you referring to prosperity centers in each community or shelter? Yeah, I thought he means the prosperity center.
Oh, that's what we were talking about right before.
Yeah,
Yes.
The satellites.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's an idea. That would be where to go to, but you gotta start with one, so.
Yeah.
I think that's where they're starting with the first, and then looking at, once we get all the kinks worked out, then we could look at putting them in various locations around.
You could have stopped me, Mr. Mitchell.
I was scratching my head. Did I ask the question correctly, or am I getting the answer I need?
It's what happens when you ask a residential empowerment coalition coordinators.
Let me give you the spiel. Yeah, sorry. Okay.
I always say communication's challenging and I'm communication challenged.
Sorry,
Never.
yeah, what Fred said.
Fred to the rescue, thanks, Fred.
I mean, we're hoping, the idea is to put the first Prosperity Center north of the Broad, south, experiences a different type of individual experiencing homelessness. There's a lot more individuals living in their cars who are working, whereas we have a lot more mental health related street homelessness.
I think it also makes sense to put it up here, because if you think about the way things happen with law enforcement, if you get picked up in Bluffton or Hilton Head, where are you gonna be brought?
Detention
When you
center.
get released, where are you gonna be released?
Waterfront Park.
So unless, and while you were in the detention center, you heard from all the other inmates about all these great things that are happening down at Waterfront Park.
Yeah.
So as soon as you got out,
Behind
I don't need to
Walmart.
go back to Bluffton and Hilton Head, I can just stay here. So it makes sense that we would have something like that here.
Yeah.
Because by our system,
Behind
we
Walmart.
move that population
Wow.
to this location.
And the, you know, the data we're finding from pit counts and working with organizations on Hilton Head like Deepwell, who has boots on the ground with this population, will support those arguments in the future with anyone who has the, well, where's ours? Why don't we get one? Well, you don't have the same type of issue. Yes, you do, but it's not this difficult, you know? And so those are the kind of things that we're preparing for as well, because we anticipate that. The concern for, well, when do we get ours?
And then good luck with the NIMBY, right? Not in my backyard.
Yes, sir.
What size of facility are you looking at?
For the Prosperity Center,
Yes.
I know UNESCO is reaching that, I don't know that they're researching it, but I don't know that they've come up with a.
We have a preliminary drawing that we were looking at, and for the life of me, I can't remember what the square footage of that
I
facility
think it
would
was
be.
about 5,000
Okay.
square feet.
5,000?
Yeah, it has quarter offices, it has a rec area, it has a common locker rooms,
Yep.
male and female, it has,
I think is it Crenshaw? Is that a county in South Carolina? Kershaw?
Kershaw.
Kershaw County has a
Has one.
prosperity center.
And I think Christie went up and
Yeah.
saw theirs, and that's sort of how this design came from.
So, I mean, it's there. We initially, you know, when we started the REC, we threw out the program, you know, we were trying to engage landlords, a landlord engagement program. How do we?
That was stellar.
That died so quick.
I serve on the REC, by the way, which is why I know any of this. So it's not because I'm so engaged, but that I am engaged, but
Yeah.
to that extent that, you know, we've looked at a lot of different opportunities to try to create the completion of the continuum, and there are a lot of roadblocks. And NIMBY is a huge part of that, no question. So talk to landlords that will offer that we would actually underwrite putting people in housing with a degree of security from the standpoint of there not being people that they would normally rent to. And they were like, oh, no, we don't want to do that. So it was not well received.
I mean, if you think of Hopeful Horizons, who runs the domestic violence shelter, and they have an entire program where they house individuals coming into domestic violence or out of domestic violence, they lost properties over the market increases. And that's someone who was, you know, opening their property to someone who was experiencing domestic violence, had case management, job, support, subsidies, and they lost properties. So trying to sell that concept to, you know, landlords around the time when the market was like, oh, my house is now 3 times what it's worth, was pretty much dead in the water. The other thing I wanted to share was the pit count findings were a little different this year than last year. We did have an increase in our collected number. We had 92 submitted surveys, and if anyone participated in that, it's, you know, physically done. Like, I encounter you, I take a survey, we dock it, HUD gets that. 92 were submitted, 80 were counted, which is an increase from our 65 from last year. Several more women we actually just got this information.
They have to voluntarily
Yes.
participate, right?
Yeah, so, and they can choose not to, and we gave out, bags with items, necessities, toiletries, things like that. The biggest thing that jumped out at me was, 100% the amount of women from last year. Last year, I think we had a handful. This year, we have 31 of that count. A significant increase in, racial, the racial differences on homelessness was pretty significant as well. And then the age, last year, we had a very high population of homeless individuals who were over the age of 45. This year, we have pretty much split down the middle on anywhere from 18 to 24 to 35 to 44. So we're seeing a younger population now.
I remember when you told us at county council, you said that, because it struck me odd that you do it in the middle of the winter, but you said
Yeah.
that's because that's when it's
People want
cold
extra.
all
Yeah.
over the country, and that's why they do it in the wintertime.
Yeah, it's, so the pit count is a hurdle for rural areas because it's not meant to be for rural. It's meant for shelters. It's meant to be, that's when you pick a very, very cold night, you're probably gonna have your most sheltered individuals, and it's for shelter programs. So that, but they do still have to do the street count, because we rely only on our street count, which makes it more difficult for us, because that means we gotta go out there. Whereas if you look at Charleston's numbers, they count their shelters and their programs, but their street count was 121. Because they don't have to, they can just count their sheltered, and as long as someone went outside and counted heads, you checked off the box. But for us, we have an uphill climb in showing, one, we have an issue. And two, we need to get those federal dollars to us, and through the COC, form that bond of, hey, you're also going to be using our numbers to receive this federal funding. We would like a lot more attention from you now. And so those are the kind of things that this kind of data leverages for us on our behalf. So maintaining that helps. We're right now tossing around the idea of kind of pit counting the whole year. A data collection system that maybe, if you don't want to use Charity Tracker, but let's make sure we're documenting this constantly throughout the year. Deepwell has started with their data management systems that they have, which is great for Hilton Head. Bluffton has Bluffton Self-Help, but there's a lot of other organizations in Bluffton that are we don't ask questions, we don't take names, we don't need to know anything about you. If you want to come get our services, just come through our doors, which is amazing, but it doesn't collect the data. And we understand why someone wouldn't want to impose those kind of rules on individuals, because then they might not come back. We don't know what people are experiencing. So we need to find a way to collect that data in a way that is kind of like the pit, where it's more friendly to that individual and like, hey, this isn't going anywhere. I just need to know what your experience is. Are you experiencing homelessness? What's your situation? But then that also facilitates the ability for those organizations to help this population get involved and potentially sign up for programs that can. We have a transitional house right now that could qualify for this health program, and I think we're gonna speak to them a little bit more about that, because they've been running that same system. It's just, they don't know how to get from here to HUD. And so that's where we come in and help.
How many, I imagine with the rural pit count, you have to hit multiple locations. How many locations were counted in that? I'm assuming the Walmart camp back there was a Broad River Bridge location.
How many teams did we have on this side?
That's, yeah.
Ooh, we had, oh my gosh, and you would think I would know this off the top of my head because I coordinate this. We had, I think, 5 different teams north.
5 or 6.
Yeah. Same amount south. So with like Hilton Head had 4 different pop-up locations. We were behind the PetSmart, waterfront. And then we have ground teams that go out and go into encampments and go talk to individuals.
I did that in Charleston when that when that camp popped up underneath the bridge. It was
And even with that, we know we're not catching them all. all.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, because there are some that are not willing, no matter what you're giving them. They won't,
Yeah.
they know full well and they avoid you, so.
Yes, sir.
Anna, do we have any idea of what the breakdown is of those who are unhoused, who would like to be housed, and those who just want to remain in the wild? Because there are some who don't want to be housed.
Yeah, there are. It's honestly probably a handful that don't want to be housed compared to those. Again, we have a very solid population of the faces we know and love and see downtown who don't. They're fine.
Right.
There's a couple of them that will tell you why. I don't want to be on the grid. I don't want to pay bills again. This is great for me. But right now, what we saw was a shift of people who are living in cars, living in, little encampments. Bluffton was very shocked that they had an encampment, several.
Do you have any data on how many folks are?
How many what? Both? No, because we have not tried to go to docks.
Cause
And
I know there's
Yeah.
several around, or used to be, that were living on old sailboats.
Yeah.
So,
That they don't own?
I don't know.
Squatters?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm assuming ownership, but.
Might have one today, Doc.
Well, then they wouldn't be homeless,
Nobody's living on that, but most is there. It's not housing, unfortunately.
It's not gonna be a boat for much longer.
We are very much experiencing large numbers of evictions. We've all seen it, even outside of individuals experiencing homelessness. We're losing a lot of workforce because of the costs. People can't afford to live here. Right now, when we think of, affordable housing has such a stigma attached to it. People think affordable housing, they think, I don't want that behind my house. But affordable housing right now is your teachers, are your firefighters, and your police officers. And that's part of the message that also needs to start getting spread is like, hey, I know you have this idea of what affordable housing is, but that's your teacher right now. Things are changing, and yes, sir.
Anna, the bullet that says draft an agreed upon policy for addressing needs, what can we do to help you with that? How can we get that process moving? Because I think that's the key to doing anything meaningful, is to have a policy that we all agree on and can get behind. And all of the local governments, to include the county and all the municipalities, get on board with the same policy. And then we have a little bit of gravity for the situation to get some funding. So what is the next step? How do we do that? How can we help you with that?
So that's where meeting with like Soloco, gathering a little bit more of the parties that have the decision-making power to the table and getting their input, getting people beyond the NIMBY is gonna be that first step. Because then I feel once we get past that idea and once we get those people at the table that say, no, you know what, we are going to do this,
Right.
then the entire narrative changes.
Can I ask?
I agree that, for this body here, if you had some type of policy or some agreement that we all can buy into to move forward. Shortly after I got on council, I think Alice and I had a meeting right here about homeless, what do we do about it? We never moved any further than that conversation because the pandemic set in and we weren't doing anything during the pandemic, but here we, post-pandemic, I'm willing to move forward with whatever. If the first stop is to look at some type of prosperity center.
Yep.
Let us all agree that that's what we want to do and let us know what it'll cost us, and we can go back to our council and say, hey, can we do this? Because we see the report every year and we look and say, what are we doing about it?
Right.
I think we want to do something and we just need to know what it's gonna take.
Let's get a playbook and marching orders.
I think it's gonna take an effort on several different fronts,
Sure.
as opposed to just one. Like I said, the Prosperity Center is a good idea, but you gotta start working from that right-hand side, increasing the availability of market stock that's affordable for people in our community. And we also need to talk about, Anna's trying to be politically correct when she's describing the pit count and continuum of care.
I like my job.
But I'm in a week, so I can tell you straight. One of the problems that we're having is that the continuum, from my perspective, is prejudiced towards Charleston. So they focus all their counts on their numbers, they focus the money on their county. We just get left out. HUD actually said that we had the ability to go out and count people without actually surveying them. If you walked into an encampment and you saw 5 people, you were allowed to just count them as they ran away and said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I can put 5 down. Continuum won't let us do that. HUD says that we can count for 7 days before and 7 days after. Continuum won't let us do that. So they're limiting, they've got us down to dusk till dawn. You're allowed to start counting at dusk and you have to stop counting at dawn. And you have to ask the question, where did you spend the night? Well, if you're asking the question at dusk, they haven't spent the night yet. So it's a real challenge, and there's other communities in the state that have finally gotten fed up and said, we're gonna start our own. Because all it is that it's a group of people that act as an intermediary between the community and HUD. So for our continuum, they have for Jasper, Hampton, Colleton, Dorchester, Berkeley, Charleston. I don't think they go any farther north, do they? And that was where they were.
That's a big area.
Horry County and such. Those guys said, forget it, we're gonna start our own. They created ECHO. Now they have a direct relationship with HUD, and they no longer have to go through the continuum. We may get to the point where we have to say, we wanna do the same thing.
It's not just driven by population though, is it?
It's what?
It's not just driven by population.
No.
You can do it, we can do it if we choose to do it with
Yeah.
Beaufort and Jasper.
So why not go ahead and do it? I mean, what's
Hold on.
not, I mean,
Now.
And it's like, Fred's retiring, don't say that.
Let's get back to some of us like our jobs. Fred's leaving.
He can say that.
It's possible. We just need to make sure that we stack the deck on in our favor, and that's what we're doing right now. We're making observations. We're making key notes. Like, why did we used to have the ability to do the pit count 5 days after the event. That got taken from us a week before the event, but it was in the training. So it was like, why did we get told? But why did you release a training training video that said you could still do this? They've hired 6 outreach coordinators in Charleston that they can do by having received increased funding that they can get by having supplied an increase in numbers that they get by counties who provide the numbers. Where's our coordinator? Why, if I am the Beaufort County coordinator, you know I'm the Beaufort County coordinator, I speak to you during the entire pit process, why hasn't your coordinator contacted me? That's a sign to Beaufort. What are they doing? So there's a lot of things that we're observing, questioning. I don't think because there wasn't, the county had the foresight to say, hey, we need someone to help. And I'm not saying it had to be me, it was just someone to help kind of coordinate this or take, because organizations, you guys are busy, everyone's busy. Organizations have their pockets, they're full, everyone's overworked, understaffed. So having a position that helps coordinate and facilitate this information and collect it is proving all these things that previously caused well, we have an issue, but what can we do about it? So once we gather more information and then have some meetings, I think one of my biggest frustrations is that Hopeful Horizons has to participate in PIT because they run the homeless shelter and they do take in homeless individuals who are exiting domestic violence. They have requested bonus funding for 3 years now and have been denied for 3 years. Why?
where's that coming from?
Continuum.
And the continuum receives the money and then they filter it down to the organization. So why did a county that provided a count of 65 versus your 121 get denied funding? Those are the questions we're posing.
Is he upstate under continuum of care?
Is what?
Upstate.
They have their
Oh,
own.
yeah, they have
They have their
own.
own
I think there's 3 in the state, or well, Echo probably makes
Yeah.
4.
Echo makes 4, yeah.
But that was what Echo experienced, was they didn't feel like they were getting their fair share of attention, and so they said, you know what, we're picking up our toys and we're going to our own sandbox.
Are there any other questions at this time? I want to
No.
thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
And Fred, for bringing this information to us. In the sense that we got a long hill to climb. So, yeah, I would echo, if there's anything that your organization,
Was that a pun intended?
excuse me?
Was that a pun intended? Echo?
No.
He's just that clever.
If there's anything that this committee can do specifically that you'd like to direct toward us, this is a representation of the north of the Broad municipalities in the county.
If you guys have any sway in the policies that allow developers to build affordable housing units, I would invite you to talk to our office about assessing or coming up with that adjusted AMI that they need to adhere to. Because if we just use the standard AMI, you're not doing anything. You're wasting your time. We have got, our workforce is making a whole lot less than the vast majority of the people in our community's income.
My number
So
just
if
changed.
you're looking to try to have an impact on the workforce and people who are working for a living, you need affordable units, not
And the housing
$500,000
trust,
home.
the housing trust fund is 60% AMI,
Right,
right? Yeah.
Ed, you were part of that group that we talked to, right? Where we tried to advocate for that, so yeah,
It is,
advocating for that percentage to be a different percentage, and then also advocating that the status stays in place for a longer period of time.
Mhm.
If you put that kind of a housing unit, we see this on Hilton, you put that kind of a housing unit
15
in
years.
place, you give them a 15-year tax break. Well, if a young family moves into that place when they're just getting started, after 15 years, the kids are just getting ready to go into high school. It's
Yeah.
gonna get more expensive. Suddenly, the rent goes up $2,000. So make that more like a 25-year, where the kids can get out of college. And now mom and dad can say, oh, yeah, it makes sense that I move out of this place. We don't have 5 kids anymore. We don't need this place. So they'll naturally change to a different location. But to make people homeless after 15 years, that's what caused those incidents we saw in Hilton Head.
The numbers of increases, yeah.
Yep.
But isn't that controlled by the state though? I mean, the housing tax credits?
Yeah, but you can have your own ordinances
Top of
on
that?
top of that.
If we do incentives related to property and assessments and so forth, we can do it. We can put deed restrictions and can put covenants
you
that,
can make it.
that never expire.
The Housing Inclusion, or the Inclusionary Housing Act that was on the floor that Representative Tenor brought forth, stated that, you know, municipalities had the ability to force developers to allocate 25% of their bill to affordable housing. And it would come down to municipalities enforcing that, and the developer would either do it or they would pay into a trust. My non-work citizen question to government would be, why are we not banking on the asset that we are as a county? We are money. Beaufort County is going to attract developers. Beaufort County is going to attract a developer for a piece of property, whether or not we enforce affordable housing laws on them. Someone's going to buy that property, someone's gonna build, because we are an asset. So why do we shy away?
Why not stand stronger with
Yes,
reference to what
why are we
we're
not?
people in?
We've done it in a few instances.
Right.
Okay.
There was an apartment complex over by, Tractor Supply
Mhm.
that was proposed, and we gave them an upzoning if they would guarantee so many units
Yeah.
to be affordable, but it's a slow progress.
Okay.
But progress is being made.
As again, as a private citizen, okay, that
It's
has
an
nothing to do with my
incentive.
job, I support all of you.
Yeah, but we try to bring that up to developers.
Okay.
The planning department will back me
Is
on
it-
that every time, but
Can
Yes,
I
go ahead.
ask, how are you defining it when you're asking the developers to guarantee that
The
affordable?
percentage is AMI?
Is that what,
yes,
how it
yes.
is?
Mhm.
Okay.
It's all based on AMI.
Adjusted AMI.
Is that the-
Is it the adjusted or is it the?
The HUD AMI,
Yeah.
yeah, which is published every year.
Which is what I'm suggesting.
Which is the 60%, which is what the housing trust.
Yeah, the housing trust is 60%.
That's the 60%.
60% of the
So if,
As compared to 80 and 120.
right,
right.
because if if the developer is thinking they're just gonna
Like Pintail
offer
Point
it at,
is
Well,
80
some
to
of them
120.
have done that. They only wanna do
Isn't it?
80% or 100%.
right, I think
There's
there's,
I think it is, because
I
that's the
think that's
HUD,
really
that's the HUD
key
tax
for-
credits, right?
Incentive.
Yeah, they have
They
my
are
tax credit.
key for you all.
That's the
as
80
well.
to 120, isn't it? Aren't the HUD tax credits 80 to 120? What are the tax credit requirements?
I don't know.
I think they are, yeah.
I mean, the effects of enforcing those things
Up to
free up
I thought it was, but
the organizations, the housing. You know, Beaufort Housing, you open up more affordable housing, they can move into that system, and then it frees up, which then filters down, which then can absorb, so,
well, they've just hired a new director.
Yeah.
For Beaufort Housing Authority, and
Have we
we,
heard who it is?
Julie, her name is Julie Davis, she's from
Okay.
Columbia, and, very helpful. I don't know that they publicly announced that, sorry I said that. Forget I said that. She has been, they have hired, and she's accepted the contract, so she is coming in.
oh, great.
So that I think is gonna be a change, because she's coming from a very viable housing authority in Columbia, so.
Perfect.
But Anna, what you just brought up, that becomes a tenet of the agreed upon policy
Yeah.
that we all get behind.
Yeah.
To make it meaningful and productive.
Correct.
So,
Thank you.
I think if this group can't be the catalyst to get an MOU related to that, there isn't a group on the northern side that can do that.
well, I think between this group and Soloco, you have it
Exactly,
covered.
we've got the
So,
whole county
yes.
covered, and so if we
Just
can,
need someone to write it.
Who's drafting it?
Tell us what you want it to say.
Ooh. Yeah, Ben's our writer.
Get Ben to write
Is
it.
that what he gets for not being here this morning?
Yeah.
He gets to write it.
is the needs assessment that Ben used in his paper and so forth, that was all from the needs assessment that we did
Correct.
jointly with the county and the cities and so forth on the 2020, yeah. Which is already outdated.
So what is it that we want Ben to do exactly?
Yeah.
Ben's gonna work on the MOU for the north and the south that we can bring before Soloco and NERPIC from the standpoint of getting a cooperative effort towards the bullet point addressing the policies for the entire county.
And we have a commitment from Soloco already to put them on the agenda in April.
Good, thank you, Mike, for that.
Well,
Well-
thank you.
Well, thank you, we're out of time, we're actually over time a little bit.
It was worth it.
Absolutely, and we need to have you come back, maybe at a time that you think is appropriate, when there's some forward
Gonna
movement,
do
perhaps when
consulting,
this
Fred?
paper comes out.
Sorry?
Can you do consulting?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, Fred will come back out of retirement.
After about a 3-month break.
I'll hold you to that. Now, be careful.
We had to cut short
Thank you.
discussion, thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
Good luck to you. We had green space, kind of an update, I've got a handout here for you. I think it's important that you have this information, because the way they get their input is from landowners, and if landowners don't know about the program, then they're not gonna get the landowners coming to them. So this is information sheet on what's going on right now, who the contacts are, for more information, for having a forum in front of one of your groups, to bring more information to your constituents, about the program and the entry requirements. So hopefully this is helpful. We can have a further update as we go forward, but they're going through, that's a second phase now, Alice,
This is our second quarter.
second quarter review.
And we're ready for applications for third quarter. If you know of any willing landowners, keep plugging it.
That's the key, is get the landowner. So this information piece is for you to use this as a promotion to your constituents.
And Gregory Neck, as most of you know, is in Jasper County, so the first one out of the.
Can you share this?
Where does it lie compared to?
It's essentially at the top.
Could you-
Oh, yeah, so the only thing
Top of the courtroom
I'll
sound.
just add really quickly, a big message we wanted to get out to this committee today is that we, staff, Mark, who you heard speaking like God from the ceiling earlier, we are available and very willing to talk to municipal staff. If you all have places in mind and you have property owners in mind that you're willing to work with to come through the Green Space Program, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to explain all of the details. Hilton Head Island has really taken like the horse by the reins here, and has brought in several projects already. So they're working with property owners in their area to achieve their conservation goals. So just putting that out there for North of the Broad, if you all are interested in that. You're welcome.
All right, one last thing, we have to select a topic for next month. You've seen the list. Is there anything particularly that interesting that you would like to have a further update on, or a new topic for the consideration?
Raise
Yeah.
Should be
between,
timely.
between the trolley and fees and expansion of service, I think.
And the Ladies Island plan, that would, I mean, that would work well with, yeah.
Where is she in the, in the plan for the urban plan? She's got the money for that already, that's,
For the
is she-
study.
From that.
yeah, Mary Lou has gotten, that we've all agreed with the planning for the northern urban. I'm sorry, I should not inhale my own spit.
We're re-voting on the funding, but that part of the funding's not going away. It's coming back up Monday, isn't that right? Yeah.
So she hadn't started then on anything on the north.
Now, who's the key contact for us on this?
Mary Lou
Mary Lou.
Renzoni. I'll give you the contact information.
All right, thank you. All right, is there anything else for the good of the cause? Yeah, oh, yes, please, go ahead.
This is really just out of the box. From what we heard about what's going on in Ridgeland, I don't know if this committee could, if it's appropriate or not, but could we write a letter of concern to Ridgeland about the annexation? I don't know, it may be, it's gonna impact all of us that have to ever drive on 170.
And
Or
yeah,
it may
as I
not be
say,
appropriate.
Yeah, or drink the water out of that.
Or drink, yeah, it may not be appropriate, but I just bring it up, you
I'm
know.
a very close friend of the mayor pro tem over there, so I can bug in his ear.
But I mean, should we put something, I mean, April 4th's not very far away. Should we try and put,
I think it's appropriate.
ask them if we could put something in writing as a group?
I think that'd be good.
Not speaking as Beaufort Jasper, but as a citizen, take into consideration what the by right use is already for that property that Jasper County zoning does allow, which the moratorium will end, and at some point that property can still be developed. So just reach out to their planners, to Lisa, find out all those things too. Cause my understanding is that you can still build several thousand homes on that property by right with the Jasper County zoning.
Jasper County.
I could be wrong, but that is my.
No, that's exactly right, and that's part of why the moratorium is in place, because the rural preservation zoning right now in Jasper County is 1 unit per acre, which is not really
It's not
rural
very rural.
preservation. So that is being updated, but also the
Yeah.
one important piece I failed to mention earlier about this corridor is that it's identified in all of the conservation maps as a high priority conservation area because of its location, and its importance to the water quality of Port Royal Sound. So as with all, conservation programs, green space included, takes a willing seller to be part of it, but there's interest and available funds if there is a willing seller for potential conservation along the corridor too.
And just as far as the green space program goes, if this property gets annexed, it's no longer eligible for green space funds.
And that's something for y'all to
So
think about.
anything
and something
upzoned
to
or
keep going.
annexed after October of 2022, I
That's the
believe,
rules.
means that it cannot participate.
Yeah, could you repeat that again?
Yeah, so if
Anything that's annexed.
anything that's annexed or upzoned after,
I'm
and Mark, if you're still on the line, October 2022?
Wait, is it?
Yeah, it's the official date would have been October 3rd of 2022.
Is it just the zoning?
It's just the upzoning, isn't it?
It's the
It's not,
upzoning
it's not the annexation, it's just upzoning if it's
Is
annexed.
that, so annexation would not impact?
No,
Mark?
not if it's not upzoned, not if it's the same,
If it
if
stays
it
what it
stays
is.
across,
I
it
mean,
is
I'm
not.
asking,
Yeah, Mark, can
The
you
power that
confirm?
yeah.
Yeah, so the way that, I mean, I think the intent is that, annexation, if the development rights were there, that would be one thing. The intent of the program is that it just can't get upzoned,
Right.
creating more development rights. So while annexation is typically a term used, because people typically will use annexation to get more entitlements on property most of the time, it's just a term we use about annexation.
Right.
So for instance, if a municipality for some reason decided they wanted to annex something and actually downzone it from the county zoning, there's an example. I've never seen it in my life, but it's possible.
Well,
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but like, for example, the property off of Old Jericho Road that we're currently looking at annexation, the zoning that they have requested is the same, they can do the same thing in the county as they're doing in the city.
Right. So what we would say as part of the green space program is that if it's going to annex into the city, then we would meet with you and say, okay, if you all are annexing it, you probably have it eyed for some sort of infill or some type of thing. Why would green space funds even get involved?
Yeah, I recognize that.
Yeah.
That's, the contest is that just because it's annexed, if it isn't upzoned, they still could qualify for green space.
We would, yeah, I think there's a conversation you had there. We would be mostly concerned about municipalities going against a county comprehensive plan. Just almost, let's take Jasper County. Let's use that as a perfect example. Jasper County is in a moratorium. So to the point of the existing development rights that of zoning that exist there, if they're in a moratorium right now, they're none. It's what Jasper County puts in place when they come out of moratorium is what those development rights will be. If they were to annex that, and it would be upzoned, just the annexation, it would be ineligible. And this is a part of the program where this program looks at environmental protection, but it also very much goes into looking in land use policies by municipalities and counties to ensure politicians and administrations are placing meaningful land use policy and not based and kind of understanding all the dynamics that are involved. So this program looks at environmental protection, but it also looks very closely at existing land use policies. And that's very important for people to understand. And if a municipality had land use policies that were extremely gross in its inability to serve with its infrastructure, that would not score well. So it would be like, look, this was created by design through political decisions to increase some type of development pressure here that was not adequately thought of. Infrastructure wasn't there to serve. So partnerships and monies that are brought to the table in those situations, I will say this, it will hold responsible elected officials' decisions in the past and in the future regarding land use policies moving forward. That's the nicest way I can put it. Chair, can I speak to, though, on the Jasper and Chelsea? If Jesse's still in the room, in addition to the letter that might be sent, if Hardeeville does not have an existing up-to-date, meaning the state law, comprehensive plan, like if they're out of date on their 10-year.
It's Ridgeland, Mark. It's Ridgeland.
I'm sorry, Ridgeland. Thank you, Alice. If Ridgeland does not have and have met their state required 10-year up-to-date comp plan, like I don't know where theirs is, they are out of compliance, and Jasper County could contest it in court if they did annex. Now, I want the attorneys to do that, but I have seen that done in counties and municipalities where any municipality who does not have an updated growth management comprehensive plan simply cannot, and Ed, I think you would know this, that you cannot just go and start making land use decisions if you are out of compliance with that. You have to make land use decisions based on your existing adopted comprehensive plan. So that's one way I think Jasper County could attack it if they wanted to.
2017 is their last comp plan update.
10 years.
They're good, they got 10 years.
I'm supposed to update it.
Was that their 10-year or their 5-year?
I think that was their 10-year.
They're good till 27.
Okay, so if they did it in 2017 and they have a comp plan that was adopted in 2017, they're in their 10 years.
They should be updating their 5-year now this year.
They should be, yeah.
Their 5-year they should be going through their 5-year, yes.
Should have been done last year, actually.
Yep.
Right, they should be going through their 5, that is correct.
That adds volumes to the conversation that we've had on Ladies Island about increasing and expanding the plan that we want to do from the standpoint of the county and the city, because we want to incorporate land use into that comprehensive plan, which they were not doing with the 25,000 that we were sharing before. So that's,
Okay.
that's my one political statement, Mark, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. So on the table is a question about whether or not we want to position, write a position paper or recommendation on the annexation proposal involving the municipalities and the county north of the Broad.
Do you wanna talk to your friend first before?
I can definitely talk to him today.
I don't think there's anything negative from the standpoint of a
Simple statement.
cooperative statement to recognize that, you know, be careful what you ask for when you're not doing it. We have the main body that handles the regional water and sewer authority that cannot provide services. We know full well that the authority with reference to Ridgeland cannot provide services.
And 170
I
is
mean,
failing already
And
as a
we
road.
already know that the Triangle Argent plan and so forth is at a max and beyond. Can we not say, you know, that?
Is it a letter of concern?
Yeah,
We are concerned as neighbors and partners that this is not the most intelligent, prudent direction to move without being political assassins here.
right.
So,
Less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think if Mike could put that in an email to Ed, we could, well, we can, I think we could put something together simple like that. And
I mean,
You
do
can
any of the members feel like there's a
The rest of them
downside
members
to
here.
doing
Everybody
that?
agrees.
I mean, we've got planners in the room, we've got
they can help us.
we've got the county, we've got
We've
Green
got
Penny,
Jesse
we've
here,
got
who's been working
Juliana.
together a
I
long
mean,
time.
I don't think we're stepping on anybody's toes by recognizing that as our neighbors, we've regionally have got to start thinking about this more intelligently. And, you know, the Green Penny, there was a reason the Green Penny was
Absolutely,
passed
yeah.
that actually helped Beaufort County deal with stuff in Jasper County for that same reason. I mean, if there was if there had not been political fortitude to do that, then I don't see why there's any problem with us sending a letter of concern saying, recognize that you have minimal capacities, you have minimal restriction, you have minimal abilities from the standpoint of taking on a development. Everybody looks at that with the idea that this is, you know, just money flowing in, and there's the be careful what you ask for always.
Yeah.
So, yes, I think we should be able to do that.
Speaking of pennies, by the time this body meets next, the county will have had third and final reading on the transportation penny
That's
referendum.
correct.
Would it be appropriate to get an update at our next meeting?
think
on what
that's
the
a
final
great
We can
product
put
looks
an
like?
update. It's on our future topics, but we can get an update certainly
Okay.
where they're at.
That way we all know what the final version of the ordinance
Yep.
looks like
Yep.
and where
So
we are
we
heading
don't,
forward.
do we need to, I don't think we need to vote on
Do we
what,
want to do a motion saying that we're going to send a letter of concern?
I'll make that motion.
Well, we don't have,
Do we have a quorum now?
Port Royal's not in the room.
Port Royal has already sent their own letters.
That's,
It's already sent a letter.
Okay, we'll get a
So
copy of that.
it really is that a better path, is that the municipalities craft their own letter?
I think we should as a body too, though,
I
we're a regional
I
body.
think it's a good
Okay.
thing to do
All right.
nothing. So,
Shows
I'll make the
united
motion.
front.
Yeah, it's another front. I'll make a motion that we send a letter signed by the chairman.
I'll
with our
second that.
concerns, and
a second.
can I get a second?
We have a second?
Yeah, a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we have a quorum here, so we'll do it.
Maybe we address something independently as well.
I didn't know.
I'm gonna call Tommy Rhodes.
Jesse.
Mayor Phillips' letter, I understand Van drafted one, I've not seen it, so,
I'll follow up with that. Okay, I'll get
All
a
right,
copy.
You gotta-
unless
you
there's
gotta
something
work-
else, I'm
you gotta
going
work on
to
that.
call for
You
adjournment.
gotta work on that.
You can use adjourn, thank you.
And let me know what he,